I'm going to do the intro now, okay? Hello and welcome to the Podcastodon. I'm a discontinued airplane.
And I'm an ill-advised expedition into Cameroon. I am going to read to you some sections from Taiwanese newspapers I have Google Translate on the subject. I'm 99% invisible, but a bitch ain't one.
To the surprise of no one sensible, it has been recently revealed that the Arge of Wolbekrun is a fraud and Wolbekrun is not a real country. The state of Greater Canada has chosen to withdraw its ambassador. Those who have exchanged currency with Wolbekrun are pursuing a class action lawsuit. The leaders will be prosecuted once they are found. To anyone who is forced to reconsider their claims on the subject of quote-unquote real GPS, all I have to say is, I told you so.
Game consoles aren't just for playing games, they can also be a handy way to play with yourself. Think about that next time your friend hands you one of their game controllers for a little two-way action. You just gonna casually throw that in there?
You're just gonna... Yeah, like... What?
Yes, maybe someday I'll get to see a cool elevated train.
And speaking of positive news... Dr. Zhu has made an announcement from the back of his giant octopus that there has been a 13% increase in regret in the uncontrolled area, but a 5% decrease in malaise and a 12% increase in nostalgia.
Man, look at the numbers don't lie, man. Dr. Zhu is probably the best thing that's happened to the uncontrolled area.
Now, there is a little bit of a caveat here in that we don't know how much of the nostalgia measured here is pseudo-nostalgia.
My question then, can you name a movie that came out specifically for Quibi?
Oh, The Golden Arm.
Wasn't that a movie about a jazz musician who was a heroin addict?
No, it was like a retelling. There was a fairy tale about a woman who had a golden arm, and she died, and then her husband tried to dig up her grave so that he would have her golden arm or something. What was I talking about with Quibi?
Throwing money at a problem does not solve it.
I think that the desert island environment presents a challenge for playing a lot of tabletop games.
Well, this is not necessarily my belief, but I've heard of a concept called the compliment sandwich.
Yes, I have also heard of this.
And I think that a good sandwich has, complementary flavors, right?
Yes. I thought I knew where you were going with this.
You have, so if you're going to give feedback on a sandwich, you got to think about, what are its primary flavors and what are its secondary flavors? And do they balance each other out correctly? When you're talking about this kind of giving feedback, you got to think, what is your primary, what do they intend to achieve? What are the flavors that the sandwich is supposed to have?
Well, that certainly is not what I was expecting.
What are the secondary flavors? What do they need to do to balance out the things they intend to achieve?
So that's a good point.
It's Clausewitzian. Karl von Clausewitz always talks about war as a means to accomplish a political objective. And in sandwich making and in every other endeavor, you go into it with an objective. Which real-life dictator did you base your entire personality off of?
I don't know. If you haven't...
You take your internet personality quiz to decide whether you're a Tito, a Stalin, or a Hitler.
God, I feel like there's some kind of anime in this.
Internet personality quiz? I know what you mean, but I feel like...
Internet personality dictator quiz.
No, just an anime about internet personality quizzes.
No. The whole thing is the premise of the anime. It is Internet Personality Dictator Quiz, is the title. And it's about an internet personality quiz to determine which dictator you are, that causes you to take on traits of that dictator once you have completed it. And then there's an army of people who all are sort of turning into clones of these dictators. They divide into factions and they all fight it.
Is the main character, viewing this from the outside? Or is he in, the smallest, least successful dictator faction?
I think that it should be like a Song of Ice and Fire type thing where it switches back and forth.
Okay, because I have a good idea for the guy who tests as Tito, and then has to join the Tito team and play the Axis and Allied dictators off of each other.
And then they find the...
Oh, not the Axis and Allied dictators off of each other.
Alloy.
The communist and capitalist dictators off of each other. Oh, no, wait. I'm trying to think about Wait, no, the capitalist dictators are in totally the wrong place for Tito to be involved. Anyway, I feel like the guy the group of people who get Tito on the quiz would be the smallest, and they have to be wily.
The overarching plot of this story is that they have to discover, like, the origins of this quiz, why it's turning everybody into dictators, and stop it from proliferating itself. And I think it spreads through emails where people say, like, if you don't take this quiz and forward it to 5 of your friends, you will
get cancer.
Get cancer or something.
Which is funny because the email itself is the cancer.
Yes. So, who made this and why?
Okay, my obvious answer is the Nazbol Party.
How does it work?
Hypnosis.
Internet mind rays.
Yeah, it's actually... No, this is a very workable, realistic idea. You just get, like, a high-level scion to implant like, an image basilisk in the quiz.
Yeah. And so, anybody who sees the image basilisk, it shows up at the end once you've completed all the questions, and it's different depending on your result. And it
brainwashes
implants
you.
that, yeah.
It implants, not even brainwashes you, it just implants some ideas into your mind.
Implants dictatorial thoughts into your mind.
And, like, again, this is the simplest form of chaos magic, because this is what pictures do anyway. Every picture puts an idea in your mind.
Yeah. So, okay.
This is just more precise.
So you do that, so it does that, and then, so you have a bunch of, like, because this is an anime, you have a bunch of, like, no, it shouldn't all be high school students. It's a bunch of, like, random people. Like, you have a high school student, you have a salaryman, you have a middle schooler.
You know, I probably shouldn't enjoy this, but I enjoy the army of Adolf Hitler impersonators who are all just dudes in regular suits. Or not even suits, just the white shirt with the tie, no jacket.
Yeah, so maybe it's the real protagonist is somebody whose friend took the quiz, and they have to, like, figure out how to stop the quiz to save their friend.
Yes.
And how to unbrainwash all the people. Why did this person do this, do you think?
Maybe the anti-democracy. They want to make sure that no one ever founds any more republics.
Maybe they want to destabilize the economy.
That's good. As I said, maybe they're a national Bolshevist.
Maybe they're a crypto nut, and they think that people will invest in crypto if they destabilize the economy.
You know, I thought you were going to say crypto Nazi, but like they were crypto as in hidden.
Yeah, no.
Like when you say crypto nut, I thought it was like a secret
crypto
nut.
Fascist is a thing. No, but that does not mean a fascist who is into crypto.
There's someone who is fascistic about cryptocurrency.
No, that's not what that means.
And by crypto nut, I thought you meant a guy who was like a nut, but in a way that he hid it.
Well, I mean, he'd probably have to hide it somewhat, or he'd get arrested at some point.
Or possibly it's like the generic anime thing about, like, society is evil. And, like, he's just proving that humans are inherently evil, that we can be hypnotized like this.
Yeah. Then there's, like, some speech at the end about how humans aren't inherently evil.
And that you don't have to be this way.
And you don't have to be this way. You don't have to be a dictator.
And you should not think about your politics in terms of only you.
Yeah. No, that's actually a good message.
Like, that's where this comes from for me, is the idea that people decide their political ideals based on how they want to be, not what they want to happen in the world.
Yeah. I think you described it to me once as, like, it's like they're picking a sports team, not like they're picking...
No, it's like a fandom was my thing.
Yeah.
Politics as fandom.
Yeah. So that could be like... Actually, a good message is like, you should not pick your politics based on fandom. You should pick
based on like the the version of yourself you want to create.
The version of yourself you want to create, or what sort of person you want to look like, but based on what you think would make the world better.
Yeah. Okay, replace leave it to the professionals with just an abstract, man, fuck you.
That seems like a decent plan. You two cause as much chaos as possible while I rob Attila the Hun. If they say something, like, because a lot of the time people will say some really weird shit. And I'll be like, what do you mean?
Like styrofoam, and sometimes I'm smooth like styrofoam.
Yeah, like that. That's something weird. And so when somebody says something really strange, I'll just ask them, like, well, what do you mean by this? Because here's the thing with receiving feedback is a lot of the time people will say shit like, you gotta change it to be this. And this is not useful. So you gotta suss out what the problem actually was. And so a lot of the time, how I respond to feedback is by asking people why they said the things that they did and trying to figure out what was their actual problem. If you just say, like, okay, you're kind of losing an opportunity there.
Question. Does FDR count as a World War II era dictator?
Do you have to have absolute power to be a dictator?
No, people just wanted to give him absolute power. He was never...
Yeah, I don't think people wanting to give you absolute power counts. If you don't actually have it, I don't think you're a dictator.
I just realized you also get Franco and Salazar if you do this. I'm just imagining what the Philippe Pétains would look like.
Oh, God. Why is this idea so good?
Charles de Gaulle was described as a dictator.
It's so bad, but it's so good at the same time.
Oh, we get Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong. Oh, but Hirohito doesn't count. Because nobody was running Japan during World War II. If I had a lot of power, I would have a compound overseas and like a private army, and I would run like a city-state.
Did we talk about e-girls? I don't think we talked about e-girls.
No. Now we're going to talk...
Now we're going to get a little bit off the deep end.
That's not normal for us.
We both care about music a lot.
It sounds good, and if it sounds good, then it is good.
You hold a gun to somebody. Listen to my mixtape.
Hey, Keith, give me a Grammy.
To the legion of the lost ones, to the cohort of the damned, to my brethren in the sorrow overseas, sings a gentleman of England, cleanly bred, machinely crammed, and a trooper of the Empress, if you please. Yeah, trooper of the forces, who's learned his own 6 horses, and faith he went the pace and went it blind, and the world was more than kin when he held the leady tin. But today the sergeant's something less than kind. We are poor little lambs who've lost our way. Bye, bye, bye. We are little black sheep who've gone astray. Bye.
Fuck.
But yes, your case study.
So, yeah, an ego. We've established there's a lot of backlash against women who are in porn and porn-adjacent fields.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of them, which means it's a backlash against a lot of people.
Yeah.
We have a case study today of a particular porn actress.
Okay.
This is Eva Elfie. She is the number 2 ranked porn star on Pornhub currently. And her bio is the following. Hey, I'm a young Siberian girl and I want to play a game with you. She's 22, incidentally. Rules are simple. You come, I win. I don't like those rules. Followed by, stop wasting your time. My tiny pussy is waiting for your sweet hot cum. That's a fucking sentence. And again,
okay.
This game, the rules do not seem like good. Anyway, Siberian.
Yes.
Also, under interests and hobbies, which just proves that she is an e-girl. Most of the time I like playing computer games, but I can also play with some more interesting toys, so, innuendo. And sometimes I read books without any clothes.
Okay.
As a method of generating simp interest, the concept of playing it's like, I'm just like you.
Yeah.
And then turn-ons, smart people, shy boys and girls kisses. Again, very non-threatening.
I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. Is she into being kissed by shy boys and girls, or is she into watching shy boys and girls kiss each other?
I don't know.
All right. So we were talking about Eva Elfie.
There's a bunch of stuff on here that is, like, supposed to appear, like, relatable and non-threatening.
Yeah.
I don't want to send you images of her over Discord because
I
the
already
only ones I
searched
can...
her, so...
Yeah, the only ones I can find are nudes, but you know what she looks like.
Yeah.
Some important points. She is sponsored by the Hungarian game studio that makes the game War Thunder. The airplane
gosh.
What I want to say, though, is that she's Russian, and she's sponsored by a Hungarian company. I think she's involved in the modern fascist international involving Putin and Viktor Orban.
I am not familiar with this.
Okay, so you know how Viktor Orban is the dictator of Hungary?
No.
Spouts conspiracy theories about George Soros, rails against gender ideology. Part of what you might call the new right in Europe. Kind of pro-Russian, but taking like a neutral stance in the war. Anyway, Gaijin Entertainment also controversially sponsored a firearms YouTube channel based out of one of the pro-Russian separatist regions in Ukraine.
So generally,
I'm suspicious.
Show me a distasteful company.
So the thing is that the gun channel is not, like, explicitly political. Like, it's just that War Thunder, I am mentally associated.
Tencent.
Yeah. Anyway, I just think that it's the fact that she was sponsored by War Thunder. It's a nice view of the, like, overlap of her audience.
Yeah.
An Eastern European military sim game.
Yeah.
Which gets into my big point about the core fantasy involving e-girls. The core fantasy of the new hotness is different from the core fantasy of the old hotness. Like, the term porn star, if you think about it, tries to deliberately try to bring in, like, wealth and glamour of being a legitimate Hollywood celebrity. That is the concept.
Yeah, e-girl is not that. E-girl is the opposite. It is the authenticity of a YouTuber,
and you also note a girl.
Yes, not
a woman, not a lady, not anything like intimidating.
Yeah,
and this is where my theory goes. There's a certain, like, weirdly, you're producing sex-related content while trying to seem pure.
Yeah,
you'll note that if you look at Eva Elfie's page. Where we're going with this story, where we're going with this example, is I think that, like, her constituent audience... Okay, no, that's not the thing we should be talking... For more background, you know, one of the people who's really considered an e-girl is Pokimane.
Yeah.
Streamer?
Yeah.
One of the weird things about Pokimane...
She doesn't do, like, horny stuff, does she?
Yes, but she's still considered peak e-girl.
Yeah.
And people are really... She is somehow a sex symbol without producing any explicit content.
Yeah.
In the whole idea of e-girls and simping and that general, like, mythos... And yes, we have...
If I search Pokimane, the second thing that comes up after just Pokimane is Pokimane feet.
Yeah, that checks out. I have a place I'm going with this. First of all, I say mythos because we have departed pop psychology here and entered the realm of the occult.
Okay.
This story, I am relating this concept in the language... I said this story, which kind of brings it in more. Like, I'm relating this in terms of symbols and rites of passage and mythology, because that's what I'm comfortable with. And my point is, Pokimane, I would argue, is peak e-girl by never producing any sexual content and still inspiring a lot of lust in people. Because it's like, are you aware of the idea that wanting is better than having?
Yeah.
Well, part of the thing about purity, right? With purity, it's with, like, an unsexual or even a naive appearance. It's a weird thing to want in your sex symbols, right?
Yeah.
Well, part of the fantasy, as I see it, is taking that purity away. Because if there's one thing I think that young men like me on the internet, who I think are the main demographic, what they're worried about is people who act better than them. People have some kind of a special status. This is why the same guys don't like superheroes. Or like, this is why people give shit about elves, right? Or like the Na'vi in Avatar. Guys...
Well, the people give shit about the Na'vi in Avatar because Avatar is a poorly written movie. But
yes, but like the idea that we're expected to like treat other people as better than us, the fantasy is that you could take in like a very old school view of the world. Female virgins or virginal women are like, people see that as valuable property in a like misogynist view of things, right?
Yeah.
The dream is that you can defile this thing that is better than you. This creature that you don't really fully recognize as of the same clay as yourself, that you could get your shitty human stink all over it. Like, you are not, it's not aspirational. It's the reverse.
It's the reverse of aspirational.
It's the dream that you can make other people worse.
I feel like we are getting into archetypes here.
Look,
we're getting into Philip on Tricep territory here.
Yes, I told you that this was going to be a real killer thing.
This is a cult, as you said.
This is a cult with an O. This is not a cult. I am not starting a cult.
No. Please don't start a simping cult. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah. No, I'm not a pickup artist. I'm not going to start a simping cult. So, point being, getting back to my main point, rather. You'll note that Eva Elfie's name is a form of Eve, the first woman.
Symbol
of the time.
I didn't even think about the Kabbalistic correspondences.
And Elfie, a form of elf.
Yes.
She is invoking both the prelapsarian woman and the fair folk who are, like, removed and untouchable from humanity.
Oh, God. That is Kabbalah.
Yes, it is Kabbalah.
Oh no! Oh no!
She is her name?
I feel like I'm reading Unsong right now.
Was that There Are No Coincidences?
Yes.
Well,
this is not a coincidence because nothing is a coincidence.
So here's another thing. She is Russian. That, as I see it, is part of the fantasy. Because doomers, which I will now fill in for, like, young white men with shitty prospects, or who believe they have shitty prospects. So, your average doomer really likes Eastern European shit.
Yeah, because Eastern European shit has this sense of doom about it a lot of the time.
And the other thing is that Eastern Europe
They've been dooming before it was cool.
Yeah, Eastern Europe, it's also a very online and thus kind of familiar society that still has different problems from the USA. The fantasy about Eastern Europe is that Eastern Europe is a region that is not experiencing the same culture war as the USA.
Well, it is the thing. It's just losing really badly.
Well, here is where it gets kind of ugly because I am asking the audience to sympathize with people who may not sympathize with them. Your typical doomer...
I think you mean empathize.
Sympathy?
Sympathize is different.
I'm asking
Sympathy
you to
means
empathize.
you feel the same perspective as them. Empathize means you understand it.
I'm asking you to empathize with... I'd settle for sympathy.
No, sympathy is stronger, though. That's what I'm saying. Sympathy means you actually feel the same way as them. Empathy means you just understand how they feel.
Okay, I'm asking you to empathize. I am asking you to empathize with people who may not necessarily empathize with you, okay?
All right.
Because your average doomer is hostile to what you might call cultural issues, what is often referred to as wokeness.
Okay. I have not experienced that.
Well...
but I have not experienced much of doomers, so I will take your word for it.
And specifically, there's, especially aesthetically, there is, among doomers, are you aware of the Little Dark Age memes?
No.
So, there's the song Little Dark Age by the band Management, right?
Is that MGMT?
Yeah, Management.
Yeah. Okay, I am not familiar with that song. I've heard of the band, though.
Point is, there is a tendency to make memes where you use that image in, like, slideshows that are supposed to represent, like, cultural decline. Okay, here's a perfect example of what I would describe as the doomer anti-progressive attitude. Just like, watch this.
Video unavailable. This video contains content from SME who has blocked it from display on this website or application.
Can you watch it on you? Can you follow
I think
the
I'm going
link?
to get desktop audio of this, so I'm going to mute it.
Okay.
No, I understand. Why are they showing, like, Vincent Van Gogh?
Oh, because these are the men that they're not as good as. You'll note that it's
They
not
show
all...
both Edison and Tesla. I
Yes.
take issue with that. You gotta pick one. You can't show both Edison and Tesla.
But you'll note the idea, it's not just the feeling that the world is declined. You'll note that it's not just like these effeminate men are worse. It's like we are all collectively worse, you know? And the fact that they throw in like men of peace as well as military leaders, that video gives you a good idea of like men used to be like Einstein, Gandhi, and Napoleon, and now we're a crudely drawn cartoon that people are saying should wear more skirts.
Well, I support men wearing skirts, but I also support men choosing not to wear skirts.
These guys, and I know this because I see this part of the internet, I think part of the...
I am strongly in favor of femboys.
Like, there's the idea of, like, how are these our social issues? This is stupid shit that shouldn't matter. You know that what it follows is the the higher suicide rates and worse social statistics.
Yeah, higher suicide rates among men.
Yeah, and the idea
With
is
a
that,
picture
like,
of sad Jordan Peterson. I thought that was Jordan Peterson at first. I'm not sure. I think that might just be a stock photo guy.
Yeah, and representing 85% of child support providers. But the idea is that it sucks to be a man in the 2020s.
Yeah.
And that, like, becoming more effeminate is, like, not going to help.
Yeah, well, okay.
You know what I mean? It's
I think there's also a grain of something sympathetic there, because the problem is that
noticed
society's
the
expectations...
The PR department of Gaijin said, we know nothing about politics.
What?
We know nothing about politics and prefer to stay out of it.
We know nothing about politics.
Yeah.
They literally said...
It was about the sponsoring the gun channel out of the Donbass.
Oh my god. That's...
Yeah, we know.
That is something. That is a powerful statement.
Yeah.
And it does not make them look good. It is not
Also,
powerful in
they
a good way that is good for
X-Blades,
them.
Which fans of Unskippable may recognize.
Yes. All right. So, to finish what I was saying, I think that part of the problem is that the expectations placed on men by society, and I know that that is a terrible way to word it, but it's the best way that I could think of off the top of my head, are impossible. It's like the code of chivalry. You can't follow it. It's inconsistent, and even when it is consistent, it is impossible to apply. And being more feminine will not fix that. Because if you hear about like soft boys, the whole soft boy thing, people were quick to point out that just because these guys dress more feminine doesn't mean they're less misogynistic necessarily. And so the real problem that needs to be fixed is that this idea of like men... What was that Fight Club quote about, like, we're raised to be soldiers and conquerors, or, like, hunters and conquerors or something, and now we're office workers or something? I am butchering this quote. I can't remember what the real quote was.
That's the concept, though.
But that's the concept. And I think that the problem is, like, there's this, like, dissatisfaction and unfulfillment, and men are like left adrift because they're not really taught how to like form good social connections, and even when they do, you know, sometimes it's just like the point is that men are depressed and unfulfilled, and that is in itself a problem.
So here's my thought.
There are a lot of depressed and unfulfilled young men.
Let's say for a moment you are a young, probably white man, raised in either the US or Europe. You grew up with some ideas about, like, when you were young, you were raised on a lot of stories about, you know, young dudes being heroic, and they were going to change the world, and they were going to take on evil, and there are all these historical examples of men who are white and who are like you, who have totally reshaped the world. That's who you're comparing yourself to. And you grow up, and little by little, you realize that this is not common. You're probably going to be an office worker, or perhaps something even lower paying, like, you know, a service worker. So, point being, you find out that this is not going to happen. And as you like get political knowledge, historical knowledge, cultural knowledge, not only is this not going to happen, a lot of people are not super stoked on like you conquering all-powerful heroic man anymore. People don't like that narrative. And some guys, they abandon it. They would say they grow out of it. They become soft boys. They develop other things to care about. And they try to hold on to the whole morality thing. Maybe they try to keep the whole I'm going to do some good in this world idea. But there's the alternative. Maybe you, reformat your expectations. If I can't be Napoleon, I can readjust my fantasy life to something more achievable. I could be a general, or a regular soldier, or I could be like a cool businessman dude, or like a cool science dude.
Well, first of all scientists are cool, but also
no such thing as a cool businessman dude.
But also, I would argue that the cool businessman dude thing is perhaps tied up with the whole idea of crypto. Yeah. Because the crypto runs on chaos magic and it is completely detached from reality. Yeah. You have to understand, the world of crypto is like the Fey realm. It is a parallel world that exists separately from our world, in which the normal laws of reality do not apply.
Yes.
And
while you're buying crypto,
you are free from the constraints of reality, and you can imagine yourself as the cool businessman that you always wanted to be.
Well, that's what we're getting to.
And I think that's a large part of the appeal of crypto and NFTs, is that because it's so divorced from reality and it lets people live out this fantasy, then it makes them want to put more and more money into it.
Yeah.
But eventually it will all come crashing down, and that you will lose all your money and realize that your wife is fucking another man.
I have to continue my story, though. I'm telling a little story here.
Sorry, I keep derailing you. I should stop doing that.
You adjust your expectations accordingly. And eventually you start hearing, because you've grown up in the 2010s, you start hearing some bad news about your heroes. Be them celebrities, captains of industry, military leaders. Either they're rapists or they've killed civilians. 50-50, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really weird when, famous Hollywood producers, are responsible for massive civilian casualties, but it happens. Point being, you have to accept that, your heroes and the kinds of people that are your heroes are not shining examples of morality.
Mm-hmm.
And again, maybe you could walk away from this, or you could adjust your moral expectations equivalently. Some guys abandon their childhood fantasies. Some guys' childhood fantasies just turn dark.
Mm-hmm.
And, people ask what's the appeal of R-rated superheroes? And it's because I think for a lot of people, non-R-rated superheroes feel disingenuous. Like you're being sold a false thing.
Yeah.
Once you have heard the unflattering details about all your real heroes, expecting any better of your fictional heroes, for this specific type of guy.
I'm just, now Bullets by Archive is just playing in my head.
It should be. It's entirely appropriate here. Point being, instead of looking at it as something to inspire you, it looks phony. You're being sold false goods. And this is also around the time you start to develop a hatred of anyone who seems to be special, anyone who's holding themselves over you.
Mm-hmm.
The great and the mighty. And you may just start hating protagonists of things in general.
Yeah.
Because, why should you root for these people if you're never going to be heroic, and if all of the people you've admired have turned out to, in fact, be flawed?
Yeah.
And so the other thing that happens is around this time, a boy should theoretically become a man sometime around the late teens, early 20s. There should be some kind of ritual that happens that you make the jump, right?
Yeah.
But in our society, the ritual is kind of unclear.
Well, the ritual is you graduate from college or you get into college. Depending.
But, maybe you don't go to college, or maybe you graduate from college and, you feel like nothing has changed. The point is, you are disillusioned with the world and you feel like you are not a real man.
Yeah.
Not even you feel overly feminine. You feel like a boy. You feel like a child.
Yeah. Well, I felt like I wasn't a real man, but then I discovered I was right.
Yeah, but see, other people do not have that out. And I know that it makes it sound like being non-binary is a convenience, but in this one case, it is true.
It gets you out of some problems and into other problems.
The point is that there's some closure, right?
Kind of.
It at least answers the questions of why I feel wrong, you know?
Yes, that part is true. The question is, but then you also get the lingering question forever of, am I really non-binary or am I a fraud? And that question does not leave you. And it can be dismissed with logic, but it will come back.
But these guys, they have this different question.
Yes, I am making this podcast about me, and it is not about me.
Well, I made the podcast about me, so, 50-50.
I'm also making it longer, which is the bigger issue, but...
So, where you are, let's say you're in college or you're out of college, you're a boy, your fantasy life has turned deeply antisocial. You've given up on trying to make the world a better place because you've seen how people want you to make the world a better place and it's not interesting. It's not remotely what you thought it was going to be. And also you've seen that the people you admire tend to make the world worse. And so you have fantasies about making the world a worse place. Your goal is maybe you start thinking about how cool it would be to be a mercenary in Africa, executive outcomes or a Blackwater kind of thing. And also, for some reason, you've heard that you know that depending on who you are, you may notice that people are becoming weirdly cool with either communism or fascism, and wonder why nobody is looking at them weird when they're looking at you weird. So that's a new thing that's entered your head. Because if you think about communism in terms of the Soviet Union and Stalin, if you're looking at it in terms of Marxism-Leninism, communism has a pretty bad track record.
Yeah.
So
it's tanky shit.
I will argue the case for the virulent anti-communist here. I can argue why you would become one.
A virulent anti-communist or a communist?
Yeah, I will argue the case for why you would become a virulent anti-communist.
Okay.
When guys talk about why being a Nazi is cool on the internet, they often talk about protecting the world from Bolshevism. I have to cover
that was an original Nazi talking point as well.
Yeah, and one of the things, again, talking about mythology, one of the things these guys latch onto, and again, this is not universal, but I feel I have to cover it here, is specifically the mythology of the Osten Front, the Eastern Front, fighting in Russia, panzers against T-34.
This is how we get to act to
Eva Elfie. So, my point is,
oh God!
Either the extreme left and the extreme right of this type of guy both love the Osten Front. So, and it ties into the broader Eastern European mythology of a world where it is still acceptable to settle disputes through violence. With the Russian mob and the current war in Ukraine and all that shit, right?
Yeah.
And, it's still cool to be a thug. And so, Eva Elfie fits into all of this, is that this is part of the dream. This is part of the Duma dream, is that you are going to have a bunch of old Soviet BMPs, like I brought up back in the first episode.
This is foreshadowing.
Yes, you're going to have a bunch of old Soviet BMPs and, cash and a compound, and you're going to, fight wars against either communists or fascists as you take your pick, and you're gonna do crime shit, and you're gonna have a hot Eastern European concubine. Not so much that you seduce, but just kind of comes as loot once you're successful, comes as a perk once you own enough old Soviet military equipment, and you're you're a big tough evil bastard. And you're gonna do a reverse Holden Caulfield and symbolically kill a pure innocent for the sake of all of the phonies of the world. Because in this case, having sex with someone is symbolically killing them.
That's very occult.
But you get where I'm going, right? And
we circled back, but it was a long circle.
Yes.
This was a long circle.
So the fantasy differs between different Dumas.
Okay, before you get into that, I was going to say that having sex with somebody is symbolically killing them is very Freudian.
I think Antonin Artaud said that a kiss is the beginning of cannibalism.
This is insane. This is insane. This is some serial men shit. Do you think that these people actually believe that?
This is what this is what is unconsciously directing their mind.
You think that this is what is unconscious? It's just that particular point that I am having trouble with. The having sex with somebody is symbolically killing them. One.
Yes, I believe that having sex to the idea
the idea of taking someone's virginity as being like
not even the
an
virginity
important act that makes
they don't even have to
sense,
be a
but-
virgin. The idea is you having sex with them is taking them off of their pedestal.
Yeah.
And yes, this is going to sound rape-ish because that also features in this.
Yes.
You are seizing something good and pure and destroying it.
Yes.
Because in the mind of the Duma, as I see it, the only thing that you have left, your one piece of power in which you assert your identity as a real masculine figure, a powerful masculine figure, even if it is at the lowest rung, even if you are kind of pathetic and your victory is pathetic, you are that desperate. The only victory for your identity over the world that seems bent on destroying you is to make things worse and destroy more of the world. Destroy beautiful things. Make the world around you worse.
Yeah. Okay, I understand it when you explain it that way. But
You are the big ugly troll dragging off the elf maiden. You are going to burn Rivendell.
Yeah. And this is deep, of course. This should go without saying, but of course, this whole idea is like deeply, deeply misogynistic. There is women do not have any agency in this worldview.
No, it's more than that. It's like you are the only real human, and the rest of the world is this like big alien thing that just wants to destroy. That's just going like slowly killing you.
Mm-hmm.
In this, women are just like an appendage of the world as Lovecraftian monster.
Oh god, this is really sounding like Freud somehow.
Oh, yeah, it's deeply Freudian. This is a Freudian interpretation. And you have to understand that the whole Eastern European warlord thing is not the only version of this fantasy. Like,
right. No, it's absolutely not.
The Amaranth guys and the Belle Delphine guy, well, maybe not the Amaranth guys or the Pokimane guys have a different version of this about, like, some basically pathetic display of power where
it's like scuffed Pantera. A pathetic display of power.
Yeah, you know, because I say a pathetic display of power because there's a lot of self-loathing, right?
Yeah.
There's the whole idea that you are not as good as the people who came before you.
Yeah.
You are measuring your achievements against Einstein and Napoleon.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't know what the Pokimane guy's fantasy, the Pokimane simp's fantasy is, but I think it's also destructive. Also something destructive. It might be related to, like, let's say you want to succeed in business. I can do that. In that case, your fantasy is probably just, like, committing massive corporate fraud. Like, that's the lowering your standards appropriately to face reality version of the original fantasy.
Oh, God. Have you watched the Dan Olson video about the Brothers?
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like that appeals to that fantasy. That, here's how to commit fraud courses.
Yeah, it's because it is the fantasy that you have...
Barely legal,
Yeah. It is the...
cat sales.
It is the fantasy that is the most reduced version, most pessimistic version of what you had when you were a kid.
I would argue that it's the least impressive version.
Yeah, and you have to keep lowering, you have to keep going to less impressive things as the world continually beats you down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the fantasy, as I say, is that the ego inherently is on a pedestal as something higher than you, But the goal is not to aspire to reach that pedestal. The goal
The
is
goal
to
is
pull
to get
them
her
off.
off of it.
Yes. And it's, you're a reverse Holden Caulfield. Killing pure innocence for all of the true phonies of the world.
Yeah, the e-girl is also in this analogy. The e-girl is also more famous than the Doomer, so that contributes to the pedestal aspect.
Yes, it's like how guys. I've seen a lot of people who just like take the side of the corporation in Avatar, and it's partly because Avatar appears to be just a fucking aggravating story, but also because of like that. The movie wants us to think they're better than us, and they have this beautiful forest and they're one with nature. And burning the fucking forest and mining the whole shit for unobtainium. That's another aspect of this. It's about plundering all that is good in this world.
Yeah.
And destroying something helpless because you're not good enough to destroy something genuinely dangerous.
Yeah.
And again, the song Bullets by Archive is perfect for this. What with the whole touch me like I'm an ordinary man thing.
Yeah. Oh,
because along with this...
so here's...
I had a parallel I was going to examine first, which is like the sad wish to be normal. The, like, just to live like your dad did.
Yeah.
Which is, a separate thing that's, like, conflicting with this fantasy. So what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, where do femboys fit into all this?
Femboys, depending on how you look at it, are either a sign of the decay, or they meme, or something else, some more pure innocence that you can like.
I think that sometimes femboys can fill the... It's interesting because I think that femboys can fill either role here.
Yes.
The femboys could be... Well, they could be either a sign of the decay, or they could be the Wojaks, or they could be the
e-girl.
The e-girl. Or they can be all at once. That is the chaos of not...
gender nonconformity.
This is the chaos that is gender nonconformity.
And the other thing that I find interesting is that the Wojak character, or like the Duma themselves, is kind of sexless in this.
Yeah.
I would argue that the Duma is, like, in a weird way, gender nonconforming, not like in a liberated way, but in a way of, like, diminished. Like, I am not virile like I want to be. Like, I have a whole line of jokes based on the idea that I'm impotent.
I think that this kind of relates to the whole idea that somebody once brought up the idea that cis people can have gender dysphoria in the same way that you feel like you're not living up to that.
Your biological sex.
Yeah.
And also, the reason I like the impotence jokes is that it's like simultaneously too much information and aggressively sexual, while at the same time not being like arrogant. It's like you're self-deprecating while being like overly forward, which is a really interesting combination to me.
Huh.
And again, it's because the Doomer sees himself as grotesque.
Yeah.
And that's why the Wojaks are so popular, as I see it. That's why I like the Wojak, at least myself, is that you look at the guy in the picture, and he's just like only sort of human and deeply sad looking. And it's just the personification of all of my early mornings and late nights. So yeah. Also, I want to say that there's also like an element of white supremacy to the whole thing.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Oh, specifically because the e-girl is either white or Asian, because other races do not seem as like unattainably alien to your typical Duma. Like they do not seem on a pedestal in the same way. If you think about like Belle Delphine, she is possibly the whitest a human can possibly be. Like, she's a white South African. I'm pretty sure that she was made in a lab by some blue mad scientist, like, developing something in a tube as part of an apartheid-era breeding program to breed the super whites. Like, I think she was raised in a compound guarded by Rhodesian mercenaries. Going back to my main point, Eva Elfie is another example of what I might call I've noticed people talk a lot about how beautiful Russian women are compared to American women, white American women. And it's the same idea of like the whole white South African thing. They're like,
The grass
it's
looks
like-
greener.
she's also seems to be like part of a race of super whites.
The grass looks whiter
Yes,
on the other side of the Atlantic.
That she's in Siberia.
Or the other side of the Pacific. It's probably closer.
She specifies that she's Siberian, and now Siberians, a lot of like indigenous Siberians, but it also brings to mind like, you know, small Russian villages full of people who have been uncontacted for centuries, you know, or like.
Oh god, that does not conjure up the idyllic image that I think that you were going for. As somebody who knows about pathologic.
But here's the point, right? She's still like, it adds to the whole idea that she's like this alien desirable, and she's like of your tribe but better.
Estranged kindred.
Yeah, she is like, if she's the part of your race that went to the distant, like, to use a concept from Lord of the Rings where some of the elves receive divine enlightenment and the other ones don't. And admittedly, those elves all, like, the ones that receive enlightenment destroy each other. But the point is that basically, by saying she's Russian and specifically Siberian, she's invoking the idea, maybe not consciously, but in the minds of a Duma, and especially an American one, that she is one level higher than you. And to conclude this whole speech, have I made this whole idea clear?
Yeah. I mean, it's complicated. It is a complicated idea.
I have explained the mythic
But you've
reasons for the
explained-
popularity of e-girls.
You have explained the archetypical Kabbalistic reasons for the popularity of e-girls.
You donate bits to your favorite hot tub streamer for the hope that one day you can burn Rivendell and prove that you are a real man, and not necessarily a good man, or even like a particularly impressive man, but that you can just prove you have. It's like burning the Library of Alexandria. It's a gesture of power, even though it's very easy and no one wants you to do it. You give your favorite streamer bits because you fantasize about destroying her psychically. And so in conclusion, Eva Elfie is pretty cute, and had we attended the same college classes, I totally would have thought about buying her lunch. Is that a good conclusion?
You do have to, well, that doesn't quite relate.
I thought it was funny to end with something really, like, mundane after that, but it would have been better if I was able to deliver it all as one. If I could do the whole apocalyptic speech in one go, that would be a funnier way to end it.
Okay, but you do have to. The other thing is, it's the Anthropocene reviewed technically, so you do have to give the Pornhub Year in Review a rating.
Yes, to borrow a system from
It's on the 5-star scale. It has to be from 0 to 5 stars.
to steal a concept from the YouTube channel Mother's Basement, I give it 3 trash cans full of used tissues out of 5.
Okay.
And I was going to add one other thing about why dudes simultaneously love and hate e-girls, which is that I don't know about other people, but in my mind, the sex drive is like tied to a rubber band ball of other emotions. And if you pull one, you set up this complicated chain reaction of other emotions. Where
That's a very good metaphor. I like that.
that if you inspire lust, you're also going to inspire like a whole, like, the first one is pain, psychological pain. That's the first one I associate with lust. And then the bunch of other ones related to, like, you know, possibly happiness, possibly not. You might, like, weird conflicted feelings about growing up, like thoughts on whether you've achieved the things you wanted to achieve. Like, if you activate one emotion, it inherently ripples into other things.
Yeah.
If you get a response, it's never going to be one thing exclusively in an individual. Humans do not respond to things in terms of single emotions.
No. And also, I think that there's a social awkwardness that a lot of young people have that I know I have, or social awkwardness is not the right word. Awkwardness makes it seem like simply difficult rather than painful. Like social pain, I guess is the right word for it, that comes from the fact that we haven't fully internalized that yet that we can just punch the Richard Spencers of the world.
Yeah. So, I'm sad that the Eva Elfie is pretty cute line didn't really land as the way to close that out.
Well, I was trying to relate it to what you were talking about.
I was hoping for
work.
I was hoping for tonal whiplash.
I mean, it works now that you explain it.
But that means it doesn't work.
Right.
God damn it, this is podcasted on. Nothing works. To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. To die. To sleep no more. And by sleep we say, we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks the flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die. To sleep. To sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of disparate love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and spurns the patent merit of unworthy takes?
It sounds good.
When he himself might quiet us make with the bare bodkin. Who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life? But that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us bear those ills we have, than to fly to others that we do not know. Thus confidence does make cowards of us all. And thus the native hue of resolution is slicked over with each pale cast of midnight, an enterprise of great pitch and moment. With this regard the currents turn her eye, and lose the name of action. Soft you now, fair Ophelia. Nymph, in thy orations be all my sins remembered.